Right, I'm going to start with you, Paul. Sir Keir suggested that young doctors were not keen on taking on the burdens and liabilities of the current system as older GPs leave the workforce. What do you think that he actually means by that?
Well, the system of GPs we have in the UK is a leftover from the days before the National Health Service. And the doctors were such a powerful force that even Anira and Bevan, the founder of the NHS, couldn't persuade their union to fully integrate into the National Health Service. So he had to set this thing up where they were almost like private contractors, running their own businesses, owning their own properties, deciding where to open and close and all the rest of it. And he famously said he stuffed their mouths with gold in order for them to sign up to NHS services. So it's a little bit of unfinished business, really. And if you are a doctor, I would say, well, surely you're more interested in caring for patients than worrying about the rent on your premises or where to open or all the other things that go along, employing people, all the things that go alongside being, in effect, a small business. So he's coming at it from the point of view of the patient. And the idea is that we get a better service from our National Health Service as a result.
OK, Ben, do you agree with that? Is Keir Starmer onto something when he says that radical changes must be made? What do you think?
Well, he's right that radical changes need to be made. And I think, in a sense, he's playing to the electorate when he says that, because we all recognise that the NHS, which is now, for the first time in history on strike in effect, needs radical change. But nationalising the GP service and introducing self-referrals is frankly tinkering at the edges. And the notion that the Labour Party or the government, if they become the government, could run GP services or indeed any private enterprise better than can be run privately is just a fundamentally failed one. I can't think of any business that's been nationalised by the government that's been better in government hands as a result of nationalisation than it was when it was in the private sector. This is just tinkering. What if we're really going to have an honest discussion about the NHS? We need to come to terms with the fact that we simply can't afford to deliver a free point of service NHS for the broad spectrum of treatments that it hands out. It was conceived in a different time under Niall Bevan when the population of the United Kingdom was 38 million. The population is now 68 million. We haven't got the doctors, we haven't got the nurses, we haven't got the money, frankly, to deliver that right across the country in the way that Niall Bevan may have wished to do it. And nationalising the GP service or introducing self-referrals or doing any of the other stuff that the Tories, frankly, are promising won't solve the problem.
Paul, what do you make of that? I mean, he's making a good point there that actually the NHS seems fundamentally flawed and can't really handle the increase in population.
Well, Ben's point that nothing nationalised works. The whole point of the NHS was, of course, it brought the private hospitals and the voluntary hospitals and the local government hospitals all into a national system, governed by an incredibly simple principle that if you are ill, you get the treatment you need at the point of need, free point of the need as well. That's a principle that's been borne out under Blair government, Thatcher government, every government you can name since 1946. And it's a very robust system indeed. Now, the argument you're making, Ben, is that things are stretched to the bigger population and all the rest of it. Absolutely right. That's why Keir Starmer's talking about reform, about recruiting more doctors, about allowing people to get treatment quicker by self-referral. I'd say there's another piece in there too, which is we've all got to take more care of our own health too. We can't just keep out handing things like statins and people not taking care of their own well-being. And of course, something that Anira and Bevan hardly touched on is mental health. And we know now we've had an epidemic of mental health problems, particularly with young people. So a reformed NHS, true to its principles, but being able to deliver this modern healthcare for a modern society is what we want. What we don't want is a return to private hospitals.
Well, Paul, perhaps though, if people were paying for more of it, they might take more care of themselves. I mean, if you think you're going to get it free at the point of need, then perhaps that's one of the reasons why people just think, oh, well, it's fine, I can use the NHS.
That doesn't work in America. That doesn't happen, where the health outcomes are worse and the rich can get the treatment they need, and a huge number of people have no insurance and have terrible health care. So I don't think that argument stacks up.
I mean, the American example is a very good one because you only get free health service in America if you're over 67 years old. And yet the government in the US spends more money on medical health than we do in the United Kingdom. And the point I'm trying to make, I think, is that if we wish the NHS to be the kind of NHS that was conceived back in 1946, no way is the amount of money we're spending on it going to be sufficient? If you want to run it for that purpose, we're going to have to at least double the amount of money that we're spending on it. And frankly, as a nation, we cannot afford it. We've already borrowed more money than we can afford. We've now raised taxes to a level which we are ceasing to be able to afford as well because of the level they've reached. And the nation is on its back. And before we launch into an attack on the Tories, I accept this Tory government's been a disaster for public services, national debt, taxation, and everything. But to have a really honest debate about the NHS, you have to really look at what it intends to serve, what its services are. And unless those are scaled back, even fundamental basic medical assistance won't be able to be provided efficiently.
Mm-hmm. Well, what do you say to that briefly? You've got a final response, Paul. You've got about 20 seconds.
Well, do you trust Labour with the NHS is the question we've been asked. If you look at the record of Labour in government,
No.
and that's what Kit Long was talking about it, then are the highest levels of patient satisfaction ever at the time Labour left. There weren't strikes. You could get an ambulance. And we had more nurses and doctors than ever before. So the answer is yes.
And Ben Habib, your answer. Do you trust them, yes or no?
Well, no, I don't trust them. And when Labour left, the country was bust. There was a note left on one of the minister's desks saying, sorry, we're run out of cash. I don't trust the Labour government with the strings of government at all. And nor much do I trust the Tories, given their performance in the last 13 years.